Just kidding.
Boom! We're live. Oh man. Good.
I didn't do my makeup.
Wow. So annoying. So weird.
So for those who are tuning in live and catching the replay of this, I thank you for joining us for this just basic conversation. I have these incredible beings with me, and I'll have them introduce themselves in a little bit. But this is simply just, like I said, it's a conversation, it's a discussion. All of us in this space, we've been diving into the field of development, self-development, self-discovery, growth, a lot of introspection, and tackling mental health as it is to a millennial, because we kind of go through certain things. And those are kind of the topics we're going to be touching on today. But what I want to do first, just with us, and then whoever is watching, we'll start with like a little grounding, centering exercise just to get us in the right headspace to allow wisdom to come in and allow it to come out through our mouths. So if you guys would, just close the eyes for a quick moment. We just want to take a deep breath in and a cleansing breath out. Deep breath in, cleansing breath out. Taking this moment just to focus on the breath, because in this particular moment, in this moment of sitting, in this moment of being, in this moment of breathing, everything is perfect. Everything is as it should be. In this moment, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go. We just want to be here and be present as we can be. And as I have all these individuals here with me, during our time together, we just want to allow ourselves to open up as much as possible, to be willing, to be ready, to be open, to be available for all the innate wisdom that is already within us to come out, so that we may speak as fluently as we need to, so that our ideas may come together, so that we can express our deepest feelings, our deepest ideas, our deepest concepts, so that we can share with whoever is listening, whoever is watching this, to know that they are not alone, to know that they can get through this, to know that there is another way. And we just want to breathe into that, allow the wisdom to come in and allow the wisdom to come out. Being centered, being grounded, knowing and understanding that in this moment, everything is as it should be. Everything is as it should be. We take a deep breath in and out, in and out. Last one, in and out. Opening the eyes. So we simply just take that time to what I call slow down to the speed of wisdom, if you will. Okay. We just want to allow everything to come in. So like I said, this is a conversation discussion, but I do want to talk about what this whole infinite worth thing is. I mean, you guys probably have an idea of it, but I only recently solidified what it is. Like the transmission kind of came in one day when I was open to it, and I kind of was like, okay, that's what it is. I wrote it down. I don't want it to go. Sometimes I like reading verbatim. There you go. So this is kind of infinite worth in its entirety. So intrinsically, all of us are worthy of love, or worthy of abundance, happiness, peace, and prosperity, intrinsically. But vibrationally, many of us aren't living our lives in that way. Because for some people, it may seem like a far-fetched concept, like, oh, I'm worthy of all of this. I don't think so, right? But for me, I believe that to be true of all of us. And it's simply a state of being. So that way you're being that person so that you can eventually become that person who knows that they are intrinsically worthy. And their actions will show that as well. That's kind of the worthy part. The infinite part is simply what I call a remembrance, like we're remembering. So whether you believe in Buddha, in Krishna, in just the universe or God, whatever name kind of is on the door for you, there's some type of intelligence behind everything that we can see and what we can't see. So like I said, whatever name you resonate with, it's within everything and it is everything. So with that kind of knowledge, that must mean that we are also infinite beings. And that's kind of where that whole infinite worth came in from. At first, it was just, I think Nico was probably the first one I told it to. It was kind of just a term I kind of coined for like my coaching business, and just I just kind of liked how those two words fit. But it wasn't until recently that that specific transmission came in when I decided to be open to it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what it means. So it's not just, at first it was just kind of like a name for my business, but now it's a mantra. Now it can be a movement. And you know, as you guys are aware, I would love it to be a collective of people that just believe in the human potential, that we're capable of so much more, and that all these things that are happening in our minds, we can overcome them. And that a lot of the stuff we're telling ourselves all the time isn't true, that there's something else out there. So that's kind of what the collective is all about. And that's why I invited all you guys into it, because I've been following you guys for a long time. And I know you guys, I know most of you guys personally, like on a real personal level. And vibrationally, I feel we're the same. Like we believe in the same things. So that's kind of why I first started off putting you guys in that Facebook group. And then I just evolved into this particular moment here where we're sharing our experiences, what we know, and hoping that whoever receives this benefits from it. Well, I know whoever receives this will benefit from it. So that's that. Let's see where I want to go from there. So me, for if people are watching live or whoever's catching this, they probably don't know who we are and stuff like that. So we'll pretend that people don't know who we are, and then we'll kind of get into a more natural, flowing conversation. So my name is Malcolm Little. I'm a fitness instructor, dancer, life coach, coach of whatever you need me to be. I'm just here to help. That's in its terms. Yeah. And in terms of like this journey of self-discovery, for me, it started a couple years ago. You know, I have a couple of self-help books that I was kind of skimming through. I won't say I was reading them. I was kind of flipping pages. Wasn't applying nothing. But it wasn't until I went to a Tony Robbins seminar a couple of years ago when I was like, oh, okay, I got it. Then I started kind of applying it and actually reading the books I have. This is my bookshelf right here. A bunch of stuff.
Nice.
Stuff. And then just started applying it, because with like personal development and self-help and all that, you can read all the books in the world, but if you're not actually applying what these people are writing about, then it's just knowledge being wasted up here. And it's in the application when you can really see if the stuff actually works or not, if you're just reading poo-poo caca, you know. Because there are a lot of books out there that are just poo-poo, right? But then some of them, you're getting those real nuggets. And I'm very big on taking what I feel resonates with me and throwing out the rest. So if there's like one chapter in a book that I like, I'll just sit with that chapter, and everything else I'll kind of just pretend I didn't even read it, because it doesn't sit with me in that moment. Maybe eventually it will, but in that moment, I only take what I need from whoever I'm reading or whoever I'm listening to. That's kind of that. So let's go through who wants to go first. All we really want to do is like name, where you from, what set you rep. Now, so you know, just name, if you want to kind of go into, you know, what you do, like as a job, career, you can do that, and just how long you've been on this journey of the self. We'll call it that. Anyone can start. Yeah. Or I'll pick somebody. Don't make me pick somebody.
In class all over again.
I'll do it.
I'll go.
Okay.
Hi. So I'm sure people in this group know, but I work mostly in the digital media space as like my 9 to 5. But on the side, I'm growing and developing my own business, and I don't know what to call it. I usually flex it as like I'm a creative entrepreneur, only because I really dabble in anything that my heart and mind wills for, and like that I'm super passionate about. Like have affinities towards like mental health, personal development, women empowerment, things like that. So it could change today, tomorrow, whatever, but that's how I'm going to call it for now.
Awesome.
Dope.
Nice.
Whoever's next.
I'll go. I'm McKenzie Dawkins. I'm a freelance writer and online digital content creator. And I would say that everybody's journey starts from the beginning, but at least consciously of me really trying to be aware of my own personal development. I would say starts 25. I'll be 27 in a couple months. So it's been a little while yet that now that I've been actively pursuing kind of conscious development. So yeah.
Beautiful. Love it.
Boom.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Alice Wu. I am a dancer, relatively full-time, we'll say that. And I feel like my personal journey started on and off maybe in 2012. So about 7 years on and off. But yeah, just trying to find a little bit more consistency in that, I feel like, as I'm getting older, to hopefully spread that type of positivity to others so that they're guided in a lot more stable route.
Yeah.
I think So, I'm Nico. How old am I now? 28.
Yeah. Oh, we lost you. I think you went muted.
Oh, hello.
Oh.
Okay. So, Nico, 28. Full-time job. I work in media, specifically commercial ad space, television. I dance on the side, and as far as like the mental health pursuit, I feel like since I started college, I was always on this like, I gotta be somebody, I gotta be something kind of grind. So I was always on like the inspirational tip, but when it came to, I guess, digging deep down and like turning over stones that I haven't turned over before, I'd say like maybe like past 3 years. So it's almost like I skipped steps. I guess trying to understand myself. So this is me like going back and figure it out.
Yeah. Nico, I got a question for you, man.
Sure.
Ladies, you can chime in on this too. But do you feel that, at least in, I don't want to say the social media space, but just in general, that there aren't a lot of guys, or at least not that we're aware of, that are like really diving into space? Because at least for me, when I'm realizing like when in this like coaching space, it's predominantly dominated by women, and I'm all for that because y'all are the bomb at hosting and stuff. You guys, but there's not a lot of men in that. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that at all. Like, I've noticed it a lot.
I know. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, and that's like funny that you bring that up because I have thought about that. At work, like we have this team calendar, and like, we input our days when we have like appointments or vacation or whatever. And you see consistently, like every week, like a majority of the women on the team have like doctor's appointments, and we know it's like we understand that we're all seeing a therapist. But it's interesting that I noticed it was mostly females, and I wonder, I'm like, well, is this something that the guys aren't sharing, or are they not like kind of looking for help, or are they doing it on the DL or whatever? And I probably only know a few guy friends that are looking to therapy, but they aren't as vocal about it. And I do wonder, I'm like, is that something that comes with like the idea of upholding a certain masculinity, or it's like not, it's taking away from being, I don't know, like, is that too in tune with your emotions or feelings? I don't know if that's like some sort of a stigma there.
I definitely feel that there is something.
Absolutely.
I mean, McKenzie, you can probably comment on this too. At least like in our community, in the Black community, like therapy is like, nah, go pray about it. Like, that's fine, right? And then as a man, I feel that, being brought up at least for me, you know, I mean, you can chime in on your experience. My thing was, you know, like don't cry, like man up.
Yeah.
You need to be the provider. You need to make sure that all these things are in order. You know, not that it was told directly, but almost like shield your emotions. Like you have to stay strong all the time. And saw that from my dad, and I saw that from all the other men that were kind of around me. So that definitely, I feel, just seeped into my awareness, my consciousness. That's kind of how, at least from growing up, I was very just closed off. I was super shy in middle school and high school. I barely had any friends. I kind of kept to myself a lot. And I've noticed even now as I'm older, it's still a little difficult for me to like get my emotions out, like to really understand what I'm feeling. Because I spent so many years just like pushing them away that it's hard to know what it feels like, to know what it is when I'm feeling like really overwhelmed or I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling distraught. Because I always just push those emotions away and I never really recognize what they felt like in my body, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it's interesting because I definitely agree that you typically see a lot more women in these spaces, whether it's professionally or just like sharing or using social media as an outlet for their personal whatever they want to share. But I also feel like now it's becoming less of a gendered issue and more of just a millennial issue where it's like kind of glamorized to be like a savage or to have no feelings, like in general, like, which I always thought sounded really silly. I get where it comes from, but I just feel like it's almost like people think it's cool to be unaffected at all times. Whether it's a good thing, like people don't let them indulge in things like, I don't want this person to know how excited I am about them or this opportunity or whatever, or a bad thing, I don't want this person to let, I don't want to let this person know how sad or angry or whatever I am. Like that whole savage mentality has, even in music, like it just seems lately on the female and male side to be very like predominant. So I feel like it's definitely, I would assume when you're a male, like you have the added like just historical pressures of like generations of certain societal expectations. But I would say that it's opening up kind of just to a larger cultural issue of people simultaneously becoming more aware of the mental health space and having more of a diction and vocabulary to speak about those things than maybe our parents and grandparents had. But at the same time, having a lot of stoicism around sharing those things in an open space. So I think that's just interesting.
I definitely feel like, and I'm thinking that we all have experienced it ourselves with our cultural background and having to like, you're not allowed to show any sign of weakness or vulnerability. And you're supposed to have this sort of like image of strength and like, very like independent perspective. And I think a lot of us have, I don't know, I'm assuming, but I feel like we've experienced that enough to the point where now we're at a point in our lives where the topic and the conversation is kind of coming out more in the foreground and the way like our millennial culture is, but now we are also mixing that in and blending that with our ethnic cultures and how we've grown up. And now we're trying to find a medium or a balance that both suffices each side of us and each identity of ourselves. And just to be able to speak aloud about those things, but also undo and untrain what we have been taught since we were younger about like, holding this sort of like identity as a secret or hidden from the outside world.
Yeah. And I feel that's one of the most difficult parts is untraining what we've
doing
what we've taught for so long. Like, no one taught us in school that no one makes you feel a certain way. Like when I heard that somewhere, I was like, what? Like they don't make me like we make ourselves feel whatever emotion. It's like you don't learn that in school. There's no class for emotions in high school.
There needs to be.
You gotta learn about the Pythagorean theorem and whatever else we learned in school, right?
No one remembers it anymore.
I'm hoping. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the shift too, especially because we're going to be the leaders coming up, and I know there are some schools that are actually adding in kind of like, I'm not sure what the actual title of the courses are, but they are starting to add in like mental health and meditation into their curriculum for schools. And I hope and I feel like it's going to be like that in the future, at least hopefully for our kids. I would love that. If
For
not,
sure.
I'm definitely going to make sure that they are well equipped for
Mhm.
the quote unquote real world as they get.
For sure.
I mean, it's amazing. It's wonderful that we're learning this at our age now because we're all still young. We're young and fly, right? We're learning this now. But like, imagine if we knew this stuff, 5 years from ago.
Yeah.
Like, it would be incredible. But obviously, we're in our space now, so we can only do what we can with the knowledge we have right now. And it's a good space that we're in. There was something, McKenzie, there was something that you said I wanted to touch on. It'll come back to me.
I talk a lot, sorry.
You're good. I love it. It'll come back to me. It's somewhere in the ether. It'll come back.
I was going to actually piggyback off of Mai and McKenzie. It's interesting coming from, not only just an immigrant family, but, a minority family. And that type of conversation was never had in a household of mine. So I just had a recent conversation with a coworker, how they were saying that our generation, fortunately, is the first to really actively start having the conversation out loud. And it's pretty incredible, even on a smaller scale, just to not have that growing up and to see it a lot more present, not just on social media, but even just person to person, is pretty extraordinary. Normally, growing up, we were taught to not feel things, or you'll be fine, or it's completely invalidated. But nowadays it's amazing to see how people DM you or come up to you and say, hey, that thing you said or you posted the other day, I feel the exact same way. It's crazy that I thought I was alone. Or it's really nice to see that people are opening up to the idea of even having a conversation. And it's pretty crazy because, again, you really think that you're alone, but you're really not. And we just have to remind ourselves that there's, a group of people at least who feel the same way, who could really support each other in that capacity.
Yeah, I think that's the obviously there's ups and downs. To like,
alley off that.
Yeah. What was that, Nico?
Oh, man, alley off that when you're done.
Yeah. I actually have what she was saying. I was going to segue into something else, but it's written down, so you can go ahead. I won't forget it.
But so to bounce off of that, the funny thing is, I just started to, I think, do the same. Where if I would feel something or wanted to start a conversation about it, I post it on like my story, and it's interesting to see who gets back to me. Because to circle back to your point, I'll say it's like mostly girls. It's more girls that will say, "Oh, I feel the same exact way," and maybe like one or two guys. So I think in a male perspective, if we're still trying to like dive into that space, we're just starting it now, So I know people who still don't believe in this conversation or who still think it's like soft to talk about this. And to basically, I've experienced like trying to convince them how this is like a real conversation that should be had, and it was like not thrown back, but like looked at me with like I had like 10 heads on. So I'm in a space where I'm still trying to make it as open as possible for like my guy friends or any guys in general to just speak about anything that they're feeling and not like think it's wasting time on getting to their goals. Because I feel like for guys, we like shut down our emotion to get to the end goal. And we're used to that at young age. So when I noticed that that's the wrong thing to do, like emotion wise, like it came like crashing down, like so many different emotions to the point where like I'll talk to Alice and be like, what's happening right now? Like, what am I feeling right now? Yo, like what's going on? And she was like walking me through it. She's like, I think you're having anxiety. Like, I'm like, this is it? Like, this is kind of crazy. And since then, like, it's been helping me understand what you need emotionally, like foundationally, to get where you have to go. So if I was to follow my dreams and pursue everything I want to pursue and not focus on like cleansing my emotions and fixing all that, it'll come crashing down like at any point. So for guys, it's really essential to really like focus on the emotions, but I see how scary it is when you don't know what that means. So to look back and be like, wow, I skipped all that. I gotta do all that. It's like scary to the point where like, it's so easy to keep turning around and keep going further and avoiding the conversation, so to say.
Yeah. It's like hopping right into an advanced class.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm trying to go right into La Vaniga. Bro, you just started dancing a year ago.
That's fine.
It's so
I'll do
funny.
it.
What's wrong? You better get into some basic popping first. Understand? Oh, snap, that scared me. Was that you? Was that me? I don't know what that was.
That was me.
Oh, that wasn't me.
I think it was me. My bad.
I thought it was on the thing. Just scared me. So backtracking to something that Alice said.
I'm so sorry, guys.
No,
It's so popular.
I know I was gonna say the same thing.
it's like one of those meditation bells. So I like there you go. But piggybacking off of Alice, what you said before, how you can post something and somebody will DM you and they'll kind of let you know that they're feeling that same way. In this, this is kind of an open question, but in this, I call it the high tech, low touch society. I don't know if you guys heard that term before. But what do you think is the? We'll go like in that social media. We all have a pretty good presence on there. What do you guys think is the biggest like challenge for us in this moment when it comes to just navigating that space, but still being as transparent and as vulnerable as we are, or if there even is a challenge at all? Interested in that. Oh, yeah, we thinking now.
My immediate thought about that is, I was always told that I was too emotional, that I was feeling too many things, and people they thought I was kind of corny. That was from like a dancing space and a social media space. But especially from a dance perspective, I hate to go into that too specifically, but that was like my only outlet, really, physical outlet to really say what I needed to say without saying something, basically. And when I guess, transition into social media more, because I realized I was getting put down for that. I still see certain, I guess, like, some people are just saying things indirectly towards people who express their feelings a lot. And it really is a struggle, but then I feel like the balance is the people who do actually message you or talk to you in person saying, hey, I just want to thank you for saying what I needed to say. And you think it's such a simple thing to retweet something, to repost something on your story or this and that. But it really, just kind words or even little words, blurbs of advice that you're, sharing really does make a difference. And I have gone into deeper conversations with people who, just had no idea where to go, but just a simple share kind of brought them back to ground level to really help them reflect on what's going on in their minds. So I feel like that's my biggest motivation, even if there is the negative side to it, that it is actually helping people in some way. And that's why I just feel like, for me personally, I can't really stop doing that, because it also helps me too, when I see certain things like that. So I always encourage that people just share, as long as it's a positive thing. And hopefully the other people against it will, be a little bit more in tune with themselves later to understand why people do share those type of things, and see that it is an actual helpful thing and not supposed to be something that's weak or negative in their eyes.
I find it interesting, like this whole attitude of, because I've kind of gotten similar comments about like being overly sensitive, or whatever, because I'm an incredibly sensitive person, and I feel like that used to be something that I was insecure about, but now I'm just kind of like, I kind of feel like that's personally my like superpower. But I just find it interesting that people are so closed off to the idea of being social on social media. It's like people will watch a boomerang of you with dog ears and watch you Snapchatting somebody on their commute and watch what you had for lunch. But the minute you talk about something like real, then you're oversharing. And it's kind of like, it's just really bizarre to me that when people try to make me feel silly, or I feel that I'm being made to look silly because of what I choose to share, I'm just kind of like, what is the whole point of social media if not to be social and not to talk about real things and not to bring people together? So I try my best not to let that bother me anymore, but it is something that you think about when you're putting out like your raw and vulnerable feelings or emotions. But kind of like what Malcolm said in the beginning, I like to live by like take what you need and leave the rest. So if somebody is not here for whatever I'm sharing, you have every free will to continue to scroll, like But
It pretty much just
I
shows.
find
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
It pretty much just shows like what what people are willing to talk about. You know, like if they make fun of it, maybe they're not like at that level to
Right.
discuss certain things, and maybe it hurts too. So their reaction is to best be like, "That's stupid." Or, "That's funny."
Defensive.
I definitely feel like people who get mad at other people for sharing are kind of just like reflecting something that maybe they've read that made them uncomfortable in themselves.
100%.
But I think to the same extent, like I feel like social media gets a bad rep, and I actually really enjoy social media, and I think it's not evil. I think it's all about the way that you use it and engage with it. And I think that social media is all about curation, and you really have to curate your own spaces, like whether it be your timeline or your feed or who you follow. And I think I saw something the other day that it was like, if you feel like social media is evil and makes you feel small, that says something about the people that you choose to follow. Like you choose to follow people that make you feel small. And I thought that was just like a really big realization for me, because curation is important, not just if like you use social, a lot of us use social media to promote businesses or to promote services, or in this day and age, but just like you are really what you ingest, and not just food. Like you don't realize how much what you are exposing yourself to is really feeding your self-esteem or lack thereof. So I think like curation in the sense of like I'm only following people that enlighten, educate, or entertain me in some way is really important. And I think it's hard to maintain that because like there's a certain pressure, like, oh, this person I kind of know followed me, so I'll follow back, blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, you're following 5,000 people that you don't really know. And whose content really isn't feeding you. But I know for me personally, I made a separate Instagram account that nobody has, where I really only follow people in like a physical and mental health space. Because I feel like when I log on to that, I'm not falling into what's this person that I know doing in their life now? Where am I measuring up? It's more just like I go there almost to recharge in a way, so that I can still be on social media. Sometimes I just need a straight up hiatus, but sometimes I find that that's like a nice alternative for me. So I just feel like there's ways around social media, because I feel like a lot of people feel isolated and from the social media space, because like Alice was saying, they either feel like they can't be themselves and they can't share what they really want to share without being targeted or made fun of, or it's just too much for them, like so I just feel like there's ways around it, and I wish that we would treat it more like the tool that it was designed to be, and be okay with people actually sharing on and being social on social media.
That reminds me of this concept, because you had said something along the lines of, when you share something and somebody feels a certain way about it, maybe like triggered something in them. There's this concept called the blue frog moment, or blue frog something. Whereas if I were to call if I were to call you a blue frog, you would brush that shit off like, what? I ain't no blue frog. Like, I mean, right? But if I were to call you like a liar or a cheat or something like that, and something that I said like makes you feel a certain way, that's because something in there's some truth in there. And that's why intrinsically, like, you felt that. Well, I feel a lot of times when people end up, feeling some type of way about what we share, it's because they know somewhere deep down, they may not consciously know it, but there's something in there, some truth in what they read or what we shared. And they're just not in the space yet to receive whatever it is that's happening. But that kind of would be the spark, if you will, that kind of started everything. Very interesting. And I love that, like, it's intention, right? Like when you go on that thing, at least for me, like I've gone on so many hiatuses and IG fast and all this craziness.
Yeah, me too.
My most recent one was just for like I'm in a spiritual class right now, so I want to focus on that. That I decided to come back and share some things. When it comes to just that space, dang, I just lost the thought. Hold on, it's coming.
It happens often. There's a lot of thoughts.
It's coming. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's somewhere in here.
It's a good pose, though.
Isn't it though? That's how I get my thoughts. Try to allow it to come in. Come on. Someone remind me what I just said before. Like it comes to me. Dang. Talk about intention, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The intention. Dang, it lost it.
It'll come back.
It'll come back, yeah.
Randomly.
But mainly, like having an intention when you hop on these platforms and knowing what it is that you're sharing in that moment. And then once it's done, if you want to scroll for a little bit, go ahead. But once your intention is done, like I try to move forward after that. And I got it. Cool. I was gonna talk about spring cleaning. There we go. But I call it like a year-round cleaning. So what I'll do is, like whoever is on my feed, like even if I know you, but if I'm not like vibrationally aligned with whatever you're sending out, I'm gonna unfollow button. I'm like, sorry, not sorry. I just that a couple months ago, I followed hella people that deleted phone numbers off my phone, which was a little tough. I have a lot of numbers on there, but I'm like, I haven't even talked to this person in like
5 years.
Yeah.
Like, why do I have your number? And the moment I deleted a bunch of people, one of them texted me. And I was like, who this?
That's the worst.
We didn't even start a conversation. So I was like, okay, I guess I deleted your contact for a reason. Like we didn't even have a conversation. It was just like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good. That was it. So
yeah.
It's all interesting stuff.
It's the worst when it's your birthday.
Yeah.
I think we should feel more comfortable not knowing who people are. You know what I'm saying? Like, I should be able to say, like, oh, I don't have this number saved. Who is this? And I expect you to be like, oh, you don't have my number saved?
It's like, you don't talk.
It's like,
it's like
you're wishing me happy birthday.
I actually have, like, a weird system where on Facebook, when it tells you the birthdays, I'll go to the birthdays, and if I don't know who this person is, I just unfriend people on their birthday. Because it's like, it's not to be mean, but it's just it's an easy way because it's overwhelming to delete like everybody you don't know at the same time. So for me, it's just like, whose birthday is it today? If I don't know you and you're like, if we're not close enough for me to actually wish you happy birthday, then we probably don't need to be following each other. So that kind of just makes it like easier for me to delete a few people every day.
That's fair.
And then you wonder, like, how did we become friends in the first place?
Yeah.
I don't remember ever knowing you.
Yeah.
What's going on? It's so crazy. It's funny.
I think social media is such a passive like space. We're all just passively scrolling and barely retaining any information, and if any, like we're already retaining information that only like pertains to ourselves or anything that speaks to us. And so I think especially for each of us and our presence in the social media space and trying to really like put forth this whole positive messaging in such a very limited time frame, like each person is going through your stuff for what, like a second. And so now we have a second to talk about something that like really impacts them in a positive and powerful way. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, like I think that's like a challenge in itself. Is just like, well, what am I going to do to be able to stop them, look at this nice photo, but also read a caption that actually means something and says something like honestly, and not just something like a nice like quote that you can probably forget tomorrow. But and for me, like I think also speaking rawly about things like this and using a space where people are like only used to seeing very like you know, curated, filtered information and photos and any sort of like media. And also now we're bringing in this whole dimension of like, all right, but we're going to get real and we're going to take our conversations from what we would normally have as in-person conversations, and now we're going to take it into this space where we're essentially invading people's like social curation, but at the same time it's important because if we can't even have these conversations in person, then we're going to have to take it to the space where people are mostly on, which is on social media. And I've gotten some backlash here and there just because it's like, oh, like who are you to talk about things like this? Like, you know, like you don't have all the information, or just like, you know, you're just this social media influencer and you're just riding this trend of mental health and millennial being and whatever. And I mean, it's like, it's hard because again, we're invading people's spaces of what they're not used to seeing on social media, and we're saying like, no, we're gonna have this conversation in this moment, in this platform, and in this whole like area. And I'm sorry if you don't like it, but you can take it with me online or offline. I will do that. But in the meantime, like this is what I'm going to speak to because I feel like it's important enough because we're so like involved in this like digital area.
I feel like that's a really good point because there is a lot of pressure. I feel like it goes back and forth for me personally between feeling liberated and feeling like kind of painted into a corner almost, where I have to check myself and reevaluate my intentions because I think in like 2017 was a really, really hard year for me. And free writing is just a method that I use to clear my head, and it's kind of my form of meditation. And I'll just journal about anything, whether it's embarrassing to me or scary to me or positive or negative. And then 2017 was the first year I started kind of just like putting out some of those thoughts online. And there really was no particular reason other than this is what I'm feeling. And I might have been on a commute or whatever and just like typed something up and like shared it. And at that point, I was posting those things very frequently because I was basically going through the intensive process of like reprogramming my own self-talk. And so I just kind of figured, well, if this thought made me happier, that I'll just put it out into the universe. And it was just purely something for me. But then in doing that, like because it is social media, people get triggered in their own ways, whether it be positively or negatively. And then so I got a lot of messages or a lot of feedback or people saying, thank you so much for posting like your daily things. And then when people started saying that to me, I think in the back of my mind, you're like, I didn't realize I was doing it daily. Do I need to keep doing it daily? I don't have one today. Like, and then it started being like, it kind of started being in my head. Like, I felt like I needed to continue to do that to the point where instead of it just being free, there would be days where I'm just like in my notes, like trying to draft something. And then that's when I had to catch myself. And it's like, girl, like this is about you primarily, first and foremost. And if that helps somebody else organically, then that's a great like spill off or spillover from that. But I think it's important to realize when you talk about these things in a public space to make sure that the intention does come from a place where you are still a student and you are still learning and you are still transparent about the fact that you are not coming from a self-righteous place where it's like, let me tell you how it works. Like it's like, no, this is me figuring out and working through my own process. And me saying positive things all the time is not a sign that I am so positive that I'm never negatively impacted. It's often literally the aftermath of me just having a whole bunch of terrible thoughts and me like contradicting those thoughts and me putting that final product out into the universe. Because that's something that I'd battle with, like people just thinking, how do you stay so positive? And I'm like, I don't know. If somebody knows how to do that, somebody please tell me, because I don't stay positive. But people really do take what you post for face value. So just to go off of what Maya was saying, I think that's like super important too, that I ended up saying to myself, like, inspire yourself first before you worry about inspiring others. Like, you know, and so I try to, sometimes it is nice. Like sometimes I do purposely just say, I just want to put something nice out there so that, you know, when you're scrolling, people can read something nice. But most of the time it's like, I just want to make sure that it came from an organic place first before I worry about inspiring anybody else. Like, you know.
For sure. I love that. Piggybacking a lot of piggybacking. We're gonna hurt
Hey.
our backs. My this idea of this thought that goes through at least my head a lot. It's like, who are you to be sharing all this stuff? Like, what have you
All
gone
the time?
Like, anybody else feel like that? Like, I'd be,
Oh yeah.
but then you got to realize, at least for me, like I've gone through my own stuff that brought me to this space, and like McKenzie said, it's just I'm still just being a student. I'm putting out into the ether the things that I've learned and have applied and worked for me, and that I'm feeling in that moment, and just putting it out there. And it's not to be like, this is the truth. It's more of, hey, try this on. Like you would go in a fitting room. Like try this dress on. And if it doesn't fit, then that's okay. Go ahead and find another dress. It's like that's really my intention when I kind of share those things. But I always try to make sure that I share it from a place of like, I know this in terms of I've gone through it. Like I've experienced it. Like I know it for myself, so I'm going to share it. I try not to share things that I've had no business in, because in the moment it comes to me, I'm just like, I don't know. It just sounded nice, so I just put it. So that's kind of the space that I'm in.
Yeah, and I guess where I'm in is like I'm wearing the dress, and I'm like, yo, I like this dress, and then trying to accept the fact that other people don't like my dress, and I think that's where I'm at right now. You know, like because I think that's why I take my Instagram breaks, because I feel like I'll post something, I'm so worried if it's gonna reach the people that I hope it's gonna reach. So I take a break because I'm so afraid to see who's reaching. So I take a break, I realign myself, tell myself why I'm doing this, and then hop back on when I'm ready to speak again. Because if not, like I tend to like I'll carry the negative comments heavier, or like I'll hold it closer to me than all the positive ones.
Isn't it crazy? Like, why do we focus so so much on like negative comments when it's like the positive comments probably come more frequently? Like, you know, like
exactly.
and it's just you get that one like negative comment. It's just like, what does this say about me? It's like nothing.
And I don't know who the person is. Imagine.
It's like I need to stop. I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah. It's like, girl, but what about all the other people that just like
That's such an interesting thought though, because I feel like that really does haunt most people. Like I remember there was one time my friend posted up a YouTube video and she got one thumbs down and she just like freaked out, but she had like 1,000 thumbs up, and I'm like, dude, do you realize like how many people love the stuff that you put out, but you focus on that one thumbs down? But it is true though, even just coming from you know, like whatever, you get a negative comment on a post, or you get a DM from one person who disagrees, things like that. It's crazy because I mean, I know, you know, most of us could probably sympathize, but like I'm definitely an overthinker and I overanalyze everything. So it's crazy to think like how much or how programmed we are to please people, because I definitely was always a people pleaser growing up, because that's how I was raised, to always make sure everybody is doing great, and to please my parents, to please my parents' friends and relatives. But at no point was I really, that sounds so weird, pleasing myself, but I wasn't really looking out for my own well-being, my mental health, just even my thoughts. Like I couldn't even organize, and I was always so focused on what people were doing and saying in reflection to me. And it wasn't only until maybe it's funny because McKenzie's here, but she asked me to write this blurb about, I mean, anything. And it was, I finally publicly talked about, you know, like my past traumas, specifically one thing. And like the response was crazy. I didn't get any negative, but I still kept focusing on like, well, now that people know, are they going to look at me differently? Yeah. Like, are they going to judge me for being honest? Like, oh, so they're going to be like, oh, that's why she's the way she is. Like, And it's crazy because out of all the positive response, people saying like, wow, like I never knew because you seemingly had a perfect life. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I literally who lives a perfect life? It's impossible, you know? And, but I knew I was always focusing on like that one person who'd be like, damn, well, she sucks, you know? And it's just like, oh, why would she put that out there? Nobody wants to hear about that stuff, like her trauma and stuff. And it's crazy how we're programmed to think that way because we're natural people pleasers, at least for me, for sure. And I've seen that a lot in my circle of friends. People just constantly wanting to please each other, make sure everybody else is okay. But I'm like, how are you doing today? You know, because that's really, really difficult to ask yourself, like, but how are you doing? You know, and focus on that, because then you have to really own to what's going on in your head and your heart, you know?
I think that's like a really good point, that it's not so much even that it's hard to talk to other people about things. It's really that it's hard to talk to yourself about things and be honest about things that you're feeling with yourself. That we just kind of, because everyone has a relationship with themselves. And unfortunately, a lot of times those things are not like, those are the relationships that we nourish like the least. And I just feel like it's not even so much about what will it's like, I assume that you're going to reject me if I share this, because I reject myself every day for going through this or feeling this or having experienced this. And I just think it really just does stem from like people not accepting themselves. That it's like, how can you believe that somebody else would possibly accept you in your entirety if you can't do it?
Which brings us to the topic of self-love and care.
I knew you were going to go there.
Listen, we taking it there. Maya just had her SCS, her self-care Sunday. You know?
Hey.
So when it comes to like like what does that mean, or what does that look like for you guys? I'm curious. That way we can kind of take things from each other too.
I mean, I think it's such an interesting idea and concept, only because, well, one, it's like such a big trend right now, and I hate calling it that because I know it's not supposed to be a trend. It's not intended to be. It's supposed to really like push people to kind of take that moment, and not just on Sundays. I believe in it all the time, but like, you know, taking that time and that silence and like the pockets of your like, you know, reflections and being like, all right, like where am I at in life, and like a self check-in really. And I think it's like, you know, now it's being so commercialized and marketed towards like, you know, face masks and bubble baths and like treat yourself. I am all for it, but at the same time I'm like, that doesn't fully encompass what the idea and the meaning behind it is. And I think it's a constant type of journey, or just like action to really, really practice that and have habitualize that into your life. And I think there's that, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I went to this like event where a friend of mine like wrote a book about the secret joy of Higa. It's like that, I think it's like a Danish lifestyle of like their version of self-care, but it's like a lifestyle. So you're really incorporating that into your daily life. And it's not just like, you know, I'm going to only like light candles on Sundays and read a book like my evening, but it's like, it's a Tuesday night. I had a bad day. I'm going to light some candles right now. Or it's a Wednesday. I'm going to have some friends over. We're going to drink wine and eat pizza. Why not? It's kind of just like keeping that lifestyle and making sure that it's not just on a certain day that you're treating yourself, or it's not just a certain time where you feel like you need to reward yourself, but it's like, how do I take this and really like encompass it and fully live it throughout my life, and really carry it on, rather than just like, you know, we're all taking some time off on a Sunday evening or whatever, you know.
It's like maintaining it over than like regenerizing.
Right, exactly. And not kind of, and I think that's also another challenge in itself, is how do we get that idea of what is commercialized and glamorized right now in the markets and really take that and be like, well, there's more than just like the fancy, pretty, like, you know, aesthetic life, but it's like really sitting down with yourself and giving yourself a check-in and being like, well, where am I at and how do I improve for this week or for this tomorrow or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I find journaling so powerful in that sense.
Yeah.
And you're just
journaling.
letting everything out, letting everything out on the paper. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something about taking this pen to paper that so much more powerful than like typing in a sense. I mean, typing is powerful too, but there's just like, I don't know if it's because we grew up doing it, but there's something about writing down on paper that just gives this immediate release. I know for me, when it comes to just like caring of self, that's one of my most powerful practices is to just journal. Or I spend a lot of my time alone anyway, so like that's kind of part of it too, just kind of being with myself and my thoughts. But most of my self care is a lot of thought work, like just dealing with what's going on up here.
Yeah.
But then, like even though I like being alone, being okay with hanging out with friends too, like just being around good company and good energy,
Balance.
and taking time out to just like not have a destination, but just getting in the car and just like I love driving. Like I love just playing music in the car, like just getting in the car and just going somewhere. Don't think about the mileage on the car. Don't think about the gas.
Just
like
change the oil.
Yeah, you can worry about that later. It's like go and kind of just be present in whatever that moment is, and I find that always recharges me mentally, and that also charges me kind of emotionally as well. So those are kind of my like few things that I do. There's a couple other things. Those are the main ones that keep me centered and balanced when all shit is going on.
I think like self-love is such an expansive term that encompasses like so many things, but I guess like for me journaling is a big thing too, and part of the I just really like journaling because it's typically the first sign to myself that I'm not okay or I'm avoiding something is when I'm not journaling. Is when I realize, oh, well, you haven't been journaling. It usually means there's something that I'm not trying to acknowledge, and then I have to like force myself. But in general, what I wanted to say about self-love is that I feel like, to what Mai was saying, like it is glamorized and it's hard. Like it's not like as easy as be like treat yourself nicely. It's like it's hard, especially if you have like years and years of just intrinsically just treating yourself poorly. And I think for me the first thing or the first step to self-love was even realizing that your thoughts are separate from who you are. That was a big realization for me. Like I kind of used to just think for a long time that there were negative people and there were positive people, and for whatever reason I was just very negative, and like I really wanted to like, why can't I just be like happy like that person? Like why? Like, you know, I just thought that was just how I was. And wasn't until later and going through certain experiences and reading certain books and exposing myself to certain ideas that it was kind of like thoughts are nothing but like just a fleeting, like it's just a culmination of media, conversations, relationships. Like you can have like dreams, like, you know, like we know that they all don't make sense. You don't have to pay attention or give credence or weight to every thought that you have. And that was like a big realization for me, because it allowed me to stop like villainizing myself as like this inherently, bless you,
Thanks,
negative person, which really opened up a lot of space for me to have love for myself, because it was kind of like, you're not a negative person. You've just been telling yourself a negative story and a bad narrative like over and over and over again. Yeah. And I think self-love a lot of the time is not saying like, hey, I'm so awesome, but it's being able to say like, this is really not awesome. I don't really like this part of myself, but I'm still going to be in this thing anyway. This thing being this relationship with myself anyway, you know? Because it's like, for whatever reason, we accept that in all of our other relationships, like you have to put in work and you have to put in effort, but we feel like we should just like love ourselves. And it's like, no, it's okay to like not be happy with where you are, who you are, as long as not being happy doesn't turn into hate or resentment or stagnation or, you know, despair. It's okay to not be there yet. And it's okay to be a work in progress with your feelings towards your own self, as long as you're like committed to that. So for me, like self-love has been, it has its beautiful sides, obviously, but it also is work and like effort and commitment, like, you know, like, and accountability. And it's almost like, I feel like as you get older, you have to become your own parent. Like, you know, because you really don't have to do anything. It's really parenting yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody is going to force you to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and if anything, a lot of people will reap benefits off of your own insecurity and things like that. So you have to really take charge of your own desire to want to feel good about yourself, even when you don't necessarily believe that you deserve it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just feel like it's a constant, just me checking my own self-talk. And I feel like that it doesn't sound like very fun or like relaxing. And it might not always be, but like I find that it's really in the work that you're doing with yourself, and your like accountability is also self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Loving the hard parts of yourself is probably the difficult thing. I mean, it's really sitting down and looking, or not even, but just like really addressing those ugly sides of you, and just being like, well, you know, I'm not only gonna love the good parts of me, but I'm gonna try to love you guys too, kind of thing. You know, it's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
Just kind of to everyone, because I'm sure we've all heard like when people say, you can't, like, how can you expect anyone else to love you if you don't love yourself? And I know people like to say that, but for me, I really take issue with that. Like, I don't know how anybody else feels. Like, that's always just rubbed me the wrong way, because I feel like that works off the assumption that everybody knows how to like love themselves, and that's just also, not true.
It's like based off an assumption as if you're like the end goal already, like as if you're already the full person, and it's like, no, I don't know who I'm gonna be in a year or so, or even tomorrow, and I'm gonna, like, it's a work in progress all the time. And I think it's just like, you know, I think what they say when they mean that is like, oh, don't expect somebody else to love you if you can't, like, I don't know. I kind of find that a little controversial too. It's just like, you're basically assuming parts about myself as if like I don't learn how to love myself all the time. You know, it's a growing and evolving relationship. So just like any relationship, right? If we're going to talk about that, like comparing our own relationship with ourselves and with other people, it's like everything is evolving and growing. But as long as it's in a positive way, then in what way does that mean that somebody else can't be part of the process?
Yeah. And that other person can teach you other ways of how to love yourself.
Exactly.
Like there's always this this exchange happening too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I thought
we learn how to love ourselves by receiving the love of others, I feel. Like, let's say you're a kid, right? And like you scrape your knee and you're crying, like you don't know how to love yourself at that moment, but your mom's like caring for you, like, oh, okay, I feel a lot better now. You're receiving the love, and then, you know, like
reassurance.
Like, exactly. Like it helps. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like there's this weird like idea behind, like, when it comes to self-love, it's like one extreme or the other. Where, I mean, like McKenzie, you said with that quote, every time I come across that, I'm like, wait, hold on. So if I don't love myself entirely 100% every second of the day, that means nobody's gonna love me,
right?
Like, what is that kind of what?
That's like exactly the issue. It's just like, wait, what? Like, so I have to, like, at what point is there ever an end to me, like, learning how to love myself?
Yeah. But it's just this idea, like, I mean, that piggyback of like we're under construction constantly. We're always going to be working on something. We're always going to be making mistakes and learning from them and growing from them. Like, if you expect perfection out of me, even with self-love, like, that's just it's just an unattainable goal, in my opinion, to be perfect in that sense, or any aspect of life. Because that statement is just so like, I mean, just to use an example, like, I feel like I don't necessarily love myself or parts of myself every single day. But like Nico is saying, you know, he's always reassuring of things that like I just constantly like put myself down on, or my friends do as well. You know, they reassure me of things. But that doesn't mean like I'm not lovable just because like I'm not feeling myself today or this second of the day. And I think there's this weird, with that statement, that quote, there's like this sense of guilt behind it also. Like, I just feel like sometimes it's hard not to feel guilty to like love yourself because you feel like you need to be focusing on other more important things or other people or whatever, and we get caught up with outside entities and then we just forget to look within. But like you said, it's, you know, we're a constant work in progress, and I think that's the beautiful part of life is, you know, we're always going to be a student of life, and we're constantly going to be learning, and so that we can also pass that on to, you know, the next generation, our kids or whoever needs it. But yeah, it's just, I feel like people expect self-love to be this superficial thing where, you know, a fixer-upper with a face mask or some spa time, which is still good to have, you know, to help you feel relaxed or whatever, because I use that too. But there is a deeper sense of, you know, fixing or whatever you want to call it that needs to be done where, you know, you have to really look inside your thoughts and your heart to really see like what's actually going on with you to help like move it along and really learn from it. But yeah, it's just, I feel like I always feel a sense of guilt behind like, I guess, loving myself because it's a very complicated process to have to go through. Yeah.
And it is it's a journey, right? That's really all.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I like to compare, I guess, humans. Like we're so similar to nature in a sense, whereas the tree, the flower has to endure the rainfall and all the craziness to still grow into this beautiful thing that we end up seeing. And sometimes we don't see them going through all the rains and the hurricanes and all this stuff. We just see kind of the end product. And as humans, we just got to remember that there's always going to be rainfall. Like there's ain't no getting out of that. Like if you're a human, it's going to rain, you know, and it's all about just building the strength to endure the rain so that you can kind of come out on the other side and really embrace the sun, which is what we're all trying to get to. We're trying to embrace that sunlight. Yeah. Cool. So let's take this time. Let's go into some Q&A. Yeah. I got like way too many questions here. And we'll pick some. They kind of jump around between like mental health and like social media and relationships and stuff. I'll pick a few. I mean, some of them may take longer, some may take shorter. We'll see. I like this one, just because we were kind of in that space with relationship, but not really. But we kind of dug a little hole in there, so we'll go into that. So the question is, I don't remember who told me this. I didn't put names down, but from person one, the question was, do you have any advice for someone in a relationship with someone struggling with mental health issues? So the person is in a relationship with someone struggling with mental health. Do you have any advice for that particular person? Yeah.
Can we defer this to the couple here?
Okay. So let's talk from experience. I got stood up for this one. All right. So do your research. I really think that people should really do your research and understanding the right things and wrong things to say, deliveries, just how different someone else can, I guess, process certain informations. Yeah, so I just realized I obviously started dating Alice, and once I understood and started to dive into the mental health space and understanding depression and anxiety and all stuff, and I looked into it, I realized a lot of, if not all, my approaches were completely and utterly wrong. And I was like, oh, damn, I did all these things that I shouldn't be doing. Whole crap. So until I read and understand what you shouldn't be doing and the simple things that you can do, it made you start to understand things and maybe catch things earlier on or see things that, you know, they might not see, but a lot of it is legit just doing your research. Like, don't think you know what you're talking about until you actually look it up and, you know, or talk to people about it and understand what is really going on. Because you only know the surface and what they're giving you. Because there's a quote saying that you only give or show people what you want them to know up front, you know, until you understand and know how to give that. Yeah, but just look into it. Like, there's a lot more than people really think that comes to this.
To piggyback off of that on the other side, I think one, it's a big thing that helped with us personally was really curating a safe space to openly talk about anything and everything. that type of level of communication nowadays, not just in relationships, is really hard, because you don't really know from a receiving end, like if somebody's going to take that type of information and like run with it, they'll understand, or they'll be freaked out by you. Like they just, there could be a lot of misunderstanding. So making sure you have that type of space where it's like, hey, we're going to openly communicate. Let's be honest. Like, let's try to be as understanding as we can. And again, with that, the type of research that you could do to better understand these topics that get laid out in that space. I think also from my perspective, with Nico, a big thing is a level of understanding on my end that he may not understand everything just yet, right?
Yeah.
Because I can't go into a relationship or a friendship or anything, expecting perfection from the other person. Like, you need to know everything about this, and why don't you get this, and da da da. And it is a trial and error process. You're really learning about that other person as well. But they may understand certain topics to a certain capacity, but there are some topics they probably never touched upon in their whole entire life, or never even dealt with somebody who's dealt with that. So that type of understanding on their end, where you really want to make sure you have patience with them, patience with each other, patience with yourself, because there's only so much you can expel in one moment too. It's a huge learning and growing process, which took years of time, and we're still learning. It's we're still learning a lot, and but I think the consistent thing that really does help is that level of open communication, being able to talk to each other, knowing we're willing to listen to one another. I think that was really helpful, because I never really had that in my life, whether it be my family, or completely in my circle of people, or this and that. So,
and it's also knowing that, like, for someone, I guess of my nature, who wants to like solve everything, who always wants to have an answer, sometimes it's just like to listen and not try to find an answer. Don't give a response, just sit there, listen to it, and just say it's okay. Because I'm always like, okay, what do you want me to do? What can I do right now? Like, what do you need? Like, I'll do it right now. Just let me know. But sometimes it's just like, don't do anything. Just sit there and like, shut up and listen to me talk. So
to piggyback off of that, I would say, like, to make sure that you are with the other person for the other person and not for what they represent. So don't look to be a fixer and don't look to be fixed. Like, like we already talked about, you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to be there yet, wherever there is, but you do have to be on your road for both people, whether that's the person struggling with certain issues or the person trying to support through it, because the person trying to support needs to also be working on themselves so that they won't allow themselves to be drained by being in that I don't want to say caretaker, that's not the right word, but that support system role so heavily, that they need to make sure that they are mindful of their own practices that they have in line, so that they can say, hey, I need a day, and that other person has to also know that they have to be supportive to, like, the dynamic has to be able to be fluid both ways. And on the other end, the other person has to make sure that they're looking at that person as an individual, and not as their happiness. Like, everything else sucks, but this person makes me happy. That's also a dangerous, like, pitfall.
Right.
And
I really do agree with Alice's point about just being like, understanding where you're coming from, and like, I've had moments with like a friend or something, and I was like in a really bad depressive state, and I was just like, really shutting people out and not talking, and she was every day just check in, but she's not like, it wasn't like, are you okay? Are you okay? Because obviously that would get me really like, stop asking me this. But it was more of just like, having like a conversation, being there when I want to like listen. And then the following week, when I was kind of like out of the dark a little more, I sat with it, and I realized, I was like, wow, she was like really there without really pressuring me to talk about some things I didn't want to talk about, but also for me, that made me understand like where I'm coming from and how I would like you know, what sort of actions I appreciate from the other person. And then I thought about it. I was like, you know what, thank you so much for, you know, not really pressuring me to say anything or do anything, but just being there. And I'm sorry that I was like this, or like I was going through a really bad time. And she's like, you know, I know that. And like, I know that's not who you are all the time. I know that this is like, these are your moments and I'm going to be there. But it's like understanding that from both sides, and to be able to like have that sort of relationship with somebody is like really important for yourself too, because then you kind of see what works for you, and like, and you know what you need at that time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to piggyback off of McKenzie, there was this thing that you had shared. I can't remember if it might have been Facebook. So I had to learn this as well from the other side of things. Is the other person also in the correct mental emotional state to receive all of that mess?
It was like that. Yeah, right. It's like, oh, I have a friend who's like, do you have the mental capacity to hear me right now?
Yeah. And I think that's such a huge point that I also had to learn, because especially in the beginning, like sometimes the other person is also just having a bad day or a bad moment or whatever, and they literally just can't be there for you either, because they're just trying to, you know, get themselves together as well. And I think that's so important. When I've read that, and I keep seeing that bouncing up on social media, it's crazy. It's such a constant reminder, which is really helpful. Like, I may be feeling this way, but they might be feeling some type of way too that day. And maybe we just both need a day to like get ourselves together so we can actually speak to one another in that safe space again without triggering anything else.
Yeah, I saw this quote. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it was saying something like, when you continue to give of yourself without telling the other person how you feel, then you make that person a thief. Because it's like you like subconsciously might grow to resent that person, even though your intention is just literally to help or to be there, and their intention is not to take. But if you are not giving to yourself, you make that other person a thief, because you're and that's why I always feel like it's really important in relationships. People always want to make the other person happy, but it's like you really need to know how to be a giver and a receiver. Like Nico was talking about earlier, like you need to know how to accept love yourself and not just make your happiness contingent upon someone else's happiness. So I think it definitely is just a lot of awareness and open conversation, communication, like Alice was saying, on both ends.
Beautiful, guys. Move on to another one.
That was a long answer.
There's a lot of mental health questions here. Which is all right. Let's see. So this one says, I think there's a stigma associated with mental health disorders that prevents people from actively seeking the help they need. How would you advise or encourage someone to get the help they need if they're struggling with this first barrier?
That's hard.
All right, Mai.
I mean, again, like I'm gonna just say upfront, like I am no professional or, you know, any sort of like doctor in any way. And I think the way I see my involvement in the movement in itself, and I understand too, like some mental illness, like issues are not meant to always be in the light. They're not always meant to be talked about. And that's totally okay. Like that's not something I can speak to, but what I can speak to are the things that I understand and what I feel like already have a presence in my life. And I think what helped me was just knowing, and I think we all can attest to this, is just having a conversation out there to show people that they're not alone. And I think like having it more endemic and naturally like in our everyday like conversation really opens up like a whole new perspective of being like, this is something comfortable to talk about. You don't have to hide it, like, or even not to talk about, but to address within yourself, you know, like you don't have to lead this double life of like, I'm gonna hide this part of me because it's not allowed or whatever. But just trying to, I don't know, like I feel like my work in this whole movement is just to speak to it more. And so if only to like educate, or even for one person to walk away and be like, you know what, maybe this is something I want to venture to and like talk about. Or I don't know, when I talk about things about like therapy and like, you know, really getting it out there, it's like the more you allow it to be part of the conversation, then maybe it reaches a few more people that are like, you know what, maybe this is something I'm gonna look into or something for myself.
Yeah.
Yes. 100,000%.
Agreed.
Perfect question for you. So, great. Awesome. Let's see. Ooh. Interesting. What kind of, like I said, I don't remember who all these questions are from, but what kind of routine is necessary to actually put personal development practices into action? And does there even need to be a routine? Ooh, that's a this, it kind of goes into what I said earlier with the notion of taking the things that resonate with you, throwing out the rest. In terms of a routine, though, I wouldn't say there's a routine in itself. It's more of just what can I do each day to move myself up the needle or move myself further along whatever or towards whatever goal it is I'm trying to get to. And then putting the practice into action. It's really just asking yourself, how bad do you want it? Do you really want to stay in the space you're in, or do you want to live in the realm of possibilities? Like those are kind of questions you want to ask yourself. And then if the answer is yes, then at that point it's either a hell yes or a hell no. Like I've been learning to not live in the land of maybe. I've learned to live in the land of hell yes or hell no. Like it's I'm either going to do this or I'm not. There's no in between. So it's really just when it comes to putting those practices into action, it's really just asking yourself, how bad do you want to improve? How bad do you really want to develop and unfold as a person? If you want it bad enough, then you already are aware of practices. Like we've kind of been taught them throughout, and they're kind of all over social media. And it's just really just trying on the dress, like picking the one you like, giving it a try, applying it to yourself. If it doesn't fit, then try on something else.
I think to speak to that, I wouldn't say routine so much in that like it's like about doing the same thing every day. But I think it's like really being in tune to like what you said, what fits in this moment. So that might be one day taking a walk in nature, another day that might be working out, another day that might be free journaling. And it's okay if you do the same thing every day and if that brings you kind of peace, but it's also okay if you just evaluate what you need in the moment. But I think more than routine, what's more important is just regularity. I do think that it should just be taken so much more seriously in the sense that like I feel like when we leave ourselves on the back burner or our relationships with ourselves or good self-care and self-love practices on the back burner, we end up just digging ourselves into this pit. And then because life, you can't avoid, like, there's always ups and downs. You lose people, things happen unexpectedly, things don't go to plan. And then you find yourself in this pit without the tools because you haven't been practicing. And so I think it's about when things are going well, not just like, what can I do to make myself feel better when things are going badly, but just like on an everyday basis, like you said, like what can I do to tell myself that I'm worthy so that I believe that, so that when those inevitable times do come up, when I really need to be able to pull from my like arsenal, that I've been practicing and sharpening those tools, so I'm not digging myself out of such a deep hole of despair, where it's like your self-talk is already kind of automating and everything is kicking in rather than kind of like, I am lost and I don't know, like, because, there's never like all hope is never lost, but it's just kind of like, you don't want to be using self-love as like a safety blanket after the fact, like you want it to be a daily practice. But again, that daily practice doesn't have to look tangibly like the same routine. But I would just say whatever regimen and whatever things like activities work for you, whether that's talking to a therapist, free journaling, exercise, or some combination of all of those things, like definitely implement and dip into those things like as often as you can. Because I think on the smallest level, it's just about talk. So it's not even about going anywhere, doing anything, spending any money to talk to anybody. It's literally just catching your own narrative and kind of swapping out a bad thought for a good thought. And something that really, really helped me was you don't have to feel amazing. You just have to reach for the next available, better feeling thought. like, you know, and that was a big thing that helped me, that like I felt like I just have to feel good, I just want to feel better. And it's like, you don't really have to feel good. It's just like you can go from terrible to feeling a little less terrible. And like that's really just important. So just reach for like the next best or the next better feeling thought and just go from there.
Yeah. And it's really just like baby steps, if anything. I mean, I don't have a routine. I feel like I'm still figuring out what my method of like really reaching out to when I really need it. But I think it is about like expanding your own resources. Like how, you know, what can I invest my time and energy into that I know will make me a little lighter or happier on certain days while I'll need it more, you know? And it's like, like last month I tried like, okay, let's like try to eat healthier and like include more working out. And then this month I'm like, all right, now I want to try this whole like meditation and like yoga. And so it's like kind of giving yourself little baby steps and little goals. You don't have to do anything big, but just like kind of like, yeah, like listening to whatever sort of needs or whatever, like, you know, is kind of giving you some sort of like fire, you know, and yeah, and it doesn't have to be concrete. Again, like what McKenzie was saying, like everything is kind of just like you figuring things out for yourself and listening to yourself. And that's already like a huge thing, is like you being in tune with what you're feeling and thinking at that time, and then seeing what meets those.
Yeah. And it's not like, even if you do have something set that you do often, it doesn't even have to be linear. You can kind of weave it in and out and bounce around depending on, like you can say, how you're feeling in that moment. So yeah, I think that's all awesome. That answered that question. Boom. I think you kind of answered this earlier, but I'll bring it back to the surface. The question is, how can I leverage social media for my benefit if I find that it wears and tears on my mental energy? We kind of touched on that.
Covered,
earlier, where it's like, you know, if you need to do some cleaning up, you know, check who's on your feed all the time. If you feel that they're just not in the line with you, if you feel that they are draining your energy, then, you know, get rid of it, like simply. There's an exercise that a coach that I follow does. It's called the energy audit. So it's like you're basically writing down a list of things that energize you and writing down a list of things that drain you of energy, and figuring out how can you either eliminate the things that drain you of energy or shift it so that they give you energy. That's a very pretty powerful practice. So if you want to give that a try as well. But in terms of just leveraging social media, it's really just, you know, you got to do a cleanup, really be aware of what it is that you're taking in all the time. Like McKenzie said earlier, it's like diet is not just your food; it's what you're ingesting in all your senses. Like what are you seeing all the time? What are you reading all the time? What are you listening to all the time? All that is going to play a part in how you are being and how you're showing up in the world. So if you feel that it's wearing and tearing on your energy, like take some time to clean it up and make sure you're being intentional when you're on that device, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, MySpace, Tumblr, you know, whatever.
And you said this earlier, but I think it's cleaning it up and curating your own space, whether that's who you follow or creating a separate account or whatever. But it's also how you engage with it. So it's not necessarily anything you need to do, except literally like check yourself before or after you are exiting the app. You know, like if you catch yourself scrolling or comparing, to just stop yourself in your tracks and, you know, just catch that behavior before it goes on to autoplay.
Yes, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I think also what McKenzie said earlier too was really helpful, was that sometimes like one massive clean might not be like, it could be equally as exhausting. And I think sometimes like you just be aware in the moment, like the whole birthday thing, like if it's somebody's birthday and you just don't see yourself, just basically. But I guess like it's also, if you come across something consistently, maybe from, you know, certain people, whatever, and you just have to ask yourself that question, or admit to yourself, like, maybe even though I know this person, I'm acquaintances, this and that, maybe the stuff they're putting out is not healthy for me to see. And that's okay to unfollow in that moment. You know, I think for me, I've gone up and down with that type of guilt. Like, oh, if I unfollow this person's going to give me like crap about unfollow. You know what I mean? Like, now there are apps nowadays that people find out who unfollows them and this and that. I'm like, what? How did you know I unfollowed you? This is crazy. But yeah, I just think there should not be any guilt behind it when it comes to your own personal, health. Like I had to really tell myself not to feel guilty. And sometimes just like even just that one in that moment is a little helpful, and that's what I've done in the past few months. If I came across anything just like randomly, consistently, I guess, negative from one person, I would just be like, I'm sorry, that energy just doesn't vibe today. So I'm just going to have to,
Also, just one last thing, I think, in terms of leveraging social media, be social. I think like talking to people more, and like when you see something, like a lot of times we'll see something and we'll just double tap it, but like it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, like that's cool, like, you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes even if you are subconsciously feeling maybe a little envious or a little like, you're comparing yourself, I think going out of your way to say, like, to recognize or to shout someone out for something cool that they did, takes back that negative energy, you know what I mean? And just puts it back into like a more purposeful, positive place, and encourages the same kind of interaction and engagement for you on your end. So I think like just like be social. Don't be such a passive, like just absorber of everything in terms of scrolling. Like take time to say something nice. I don't know. That always like makes me feel better about being on social media.
Yeah.
We'll do one more. McKenzie, can you do me a favor and turn off your video, then come back on?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I thought I was the one seeing that.
I know.
Oh,
I thought I was the only. My face was like, what?
Is it better now?
One of those old school TVs where the antenna was
Static.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Pay-per-view movie.
favorite. Let's do the last one. Where is it? Ooh, that's a good one. How do you begin to believe in yourself when you feel like you can't do anything by yourself?
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's intense.
I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out.
I know.
Word.
Let's sit with that for a moment.
Well, the one quote I like to follow is if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, go with people. So you need people to understand, like, or to help you understand certain things about yourself. Like different perspectives, different ways to look at things. Those all help you shape your own perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if someone sees something that you don't see? I always see it as like, you ever seen those sculpting classes or those painting classes where there's like a model in the middle and everyone's painting the same model, but like 360? Everyone's gonna have their own different like angle of that model and how they see that piece of art and how they'll paint it and draw it, but it's still the same thing. You know what I'm saying? But if you understand everyone's perspective, you'll get a full 360 understanding of whatever topic it is you're trying to understand.
And I think like, and I think that's a huge thing that I'm also learning is that this journey isn't meant to be lived alone. You are on this path of like, self-love and really growing yourself from within and stuff, but it's not to say that it has to be a lonely one, like we are on this earth for a reason with other people. We have the people in our lives for a reason, and that's like our safe space. Like we have to learn how to lean on to that and know that like when we're not okay, like which we're not expected to be 100% of the time, there are going to be times where we're not ourselves, and that's like why we have the people we have in our lives, and that's why we choose the people in our lives, because these are people that are helping each other in a way to like continue growing and walking onto that path. And it's not, I don't know, I personally feel like it's not meant to be like a lonely type of journey. And I think like you can, even when you don't believe in yourself or you're having a hard time, what Nico said, it's like, doesn't mean that other people aren't seeing the same, but are seeing the same thing. They're going to see another part of it that you're not recognizing because you're so like deeply involved in your head, and sometimes you need to like pull outside of that and be like, no, this is what we're seeing and you're doing great.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. It's support. Oh, go ahead.
No, you can go.
I was gonna say that it's support, right? I mean, just if we go back in time, just kind of like the prehistoric days, like we're social beings. Like we need to kind of be around people, and sometimes you just need that one person to see you for you.
McKenzie.
Sorry.
Go. Oh, you're on twice? What the hell? That was freaky. Sometimes you just need that one person. So don't think that it needs to be done by yourself. Like it's okay to have support. No one said that it had to be done alone. Just basically piggybacking off of all what you said. Who was going? Right?
I wanted to speak to just the believing in yourself aspect, because I think you guys really covered the fact that you don't have to do it alone. But I don't know, that question just kind of hit me really personally, because there was a time when I asked that same thing. Like, I think so much, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but like so often people assume that self-love or confidence is intrinsic, to the point where I feel like there's a little bit of shaming nowadays for like people who are insecure. Like, oh, blah, 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 they're just doing that because they're insecure. And it's like, that's not like it shouldn't be a demonizing thing. That should be, that's like somebody's cry for help. Like, you know what I mean? And I feel like it should be approached with a little bit more like tenderness. But to that aspect, like, I know what it feels like to not believe in yourself, and to kind of feel like that's the general advice everyone gives. And it's very isolating when you want to do something really bad, whatever it is. And people are like, well, how do you do it? You just got to believe in yourself. Okay, thanks, but like I don't know how.
How do you do
And it can be very isolating. And so for me, I needed to, for myself, define practically what that means in terms of like actionable advice that I could actually use. And my credo for this year has been confidence is in the doing. And it's just kind of like, it's okay. Like, there, especially when you're entering into a new field, be it whatever it is, something you haven't done before, you have to build credibility with yourself. And that's really the only way. You're not always going to start off and believing, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I can run this marathon. Or yeah, I can whatever. You have to try and fail a couple times and get a little further each time. And in the doing of those things, you will build confidence. And I think like belief often comes through action. Like, it would be great to wake up and just believe that you are this like limitless, infinitely worthy being, because you are. But a lot of times that's just not how it works. And so you have to confront things, you have to fail, you have to do a little better each time. And Tom Bilyeu is just like mindset coach and speaker that I follow on YouTube. I really like to show impact theory, but he says you really have to build credibility with yourself. Like, why would you believe in yourself if you continue to set goals that you never put any action behind? If you say like, I want to lose weight or, get this promotion, but you stay in that place of fear and you take no steps towards it, that's why you don't believe in yourself, because you don't have credibility with yourself. It's the same way that you wouldn't believe in somebody or trust somebody's word if they were always breaking it to you, whether that be a partner or a friend, So you have to do the things you say you're going to do and uphold your word with yourself, and not be so quick to break promises to yourself just because you're not accountable to anyone else. So I think you definitely don't have to do things alone, like Maya and Nico and Malcolm all addressed. But in terms of believing in yourself, like, try and then just try again and keep doing it. And I think that confidence comes in time. Like, you just see that, okay, I it's not bad. I didn't die and I got a little further, Yeah.
The confidence is built in all the failures and the mistakes and just the continuity of you just keep going and going. That's really where I feel confidence is built from. Like, I don't think people are born confident. They just kept trying after they failed, kept going and going. That's really where it's from.
It has to be like tested first. Like, the only way you can build confidence is during the times of it being like tested, trial. Like, you can be confident when nothing's happening, but like it's when you're the least confident when you have to practice being confident, which is kind of like a catch-22. But
yeah.
Also, it's 11/11. I just want to point that out.
I wish.
With that being the time, I want to wrap this up. Yeah, that's actually perfect. That was perfect. I mean, synchronicity. It was the last question, and timing is always wonderful. So to wrap this up, I'm taking a page out of my man Lewis Howell's School of Greatness podcast, taking a page out of his book to just acknowledge each of you for first agreeing to do this and for being as open and as receptive and as vulnerable as you were in this past, little over an hour. It means a lot to me that you all agreed to do this and that we were able to actually get this out there into the space, into the world. So to Nico, I want to thank you and acknowledge you for being such a strong male presence in my life and always supporting me and being just a brother to me. So I acknowledge you and I thank you for that. I've known you for Lord knows how long. And for as long as I've known you, you've always been a light and a supporter. And seeing your journey, not even just through dance, but just as a person, has been insightful and inspiring. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you.
Thank
McKenzie,
you.
just met not too long ago, but I already knew the moment we kind of crossed paths that there was something there that we've met before. Like souls will always kind of acknowledge souls that are in that vibrational space. So I'm going to acknowledge you for constantly sharing yourself and being open and being willing to express yourself fully in just in the space of the internet and just space in person. Because when I met you in person, I already felt that connection. You're very what's the word? You're present in person. So I appreciate acknowledge that about you. And I know we kind of recently just got better acquainted, but I want to thank you and acknowledge you for all that you're doing in your space, in your field, because like I told you in a message, like you're impacting people in ways that you're probably not even aware of. And I want to thank you for being as open and as vulnerable as you've been, and just know that, you know, you're helping so many people, and it's beautiful. So I want to thank all of you guys for just being in this space with me and allowing this to be as great as it was. Because I thought this was awesome. I don't know about you guys, but I thought this was great.
Definitely.
And I know whoever watches this on the replay is going to learn a lot. And I already know that we already impacted one person, which was the goal. And I'm excited to hopefully, you know, do this again. I don't see this being the last time we do this.
Yes, please.
It's refreshing.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for putting this together.
Yes, for sure.
So you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
You too.
I'll talk soon. Cool.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Figure this out.
Happy Monday.
Happy
Monday.
Enjoy.
Bye.